Multiplayer in Honkai Star Rail. This is something that I'm sure a lot of people have wanted for the longest time, and were very disappointed when we got Honkai Star Rail, and the only form of multiplayer we had was this sort of companion system. However, there are some promising reasons as to why multiplayer, and also just other things to do with, for example, guilds, could be coming in the near future. And I wanted to get into it in this video. I want to talk about, first of all, the reasons as to why it's a good idea to add, and then also how they could add it, and what the rewards could possibly be. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and feel free to comment any ideas that you get from watching this video. I got most of these ideas from videos I've watched around, and other content creators fueling my imagination for what we could be seeing with guild content. If we get enough people wanting this, it could be very easily implemented. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, I want to say that I think rooms are going to be a really nice thing that they could be adding to the Astral Express. Either we could fully customize the Astral Express, which would be really nice, or we could at least have our own little room to customize. The reason why this is a good idea is because it sets up a framework of essentially positive gameplay to get rewards. Now you see, the issue is, with certain content, is that even in the newer event, doing the hardest content gets you credits. That is it. There are no rewards locked behind the hardest content. Everything can be cleared with the trial characters and just some random character that you have, and you can still get a double S despite the fight taking about 30 turns. It's really not that hard. So I think it would be really nice to have some things locked behind this harder content. Especially because all of the events that we have had so far have an availability if you miss them. If you miss an event, you can literally go to the travel log and just go back and do it. So I think that they should start adding rewards to put in your room. This would mean that you can still get the characters you want because they could put the Prima Gems for the easier fights, but then it also gives people an actual incentive to beat the harder content other than just beat it, why not? Because I guarantee you that a small amount of credits is not going to make people want to actively clear the hardest content, compared to if you just added something. At least if you got a trophy and you enjoyed the event and the trophy looks nice, you could put it in your room. Stuff like this. This also is good for the game, because it adds another way of artificially inflating the amount of gameplay you can do. And this is another way that guilds could work. It's just another way to artificially inflate the amount of stuff you can do, which makes the downtime in Honkai feel a lot less downtimey. I'm sure I'm not the only person that thinks this, but when Honkai has a dead patch, it really feels like a dead patch, and it feels like it drags on quite long. Especially Huohuo's patch. If I didn't pull for Huohuo, I would have not been essentially entertained by the patch, because I completed all of the event on day 1, and for the rest of it I was sort of just waiting. But in Genshin, you have exploration to do, so that's sort of artificially inflating the amount of stuff you can do. And I really think that we need something like that in Honkai. And this is where, later on in the video, the guilds come into play. But I think that rewards in terms of trophies, or rewards in terms of, hey, I fully completed this event with every single quest, and I got literally just like a little, I don't know, for example, Ancestral Garden, you could get a little orb or like a glass jar with one of the ghost things in it, like the eyeball. You could get a little jar that has this eyeball in it, and like when you walk up to it, it says, hey, let me out. Something stupid like that, that sort of breathes life into a room and reminds you of the fun that you had doing the event. These are just a few examples of ways you could add trophies. Obviously, you could literally just have a boring, normal trophy that just looks like the event symbol, but I think, obviously, Honkai Star Rail team can do, and probably will do, infinitely better than that. So I'm really hoping to get a room. This is the first thing that essentially breathes life into multiplayer gameplay. This says, like, hey, look at my room. You can customize your room, and maybe you can list it. You could have rooms to visit and have a look at. Maybe one of the weekly quests for literally just the battle pass could be visit someone else's room. And then you look at someone else's room and think, hey, that's sick. And then you then want to customize your own room as well. So incentivizing players to do it through that would also be a good way. But the main reason why I want sort of a visit someone else's room and take a look around gameplay is because I think this needs to be implemented into a guild space. And I have a few thoughts on how we could possibly implement guild gameplay. So first of all, players really want PvP. And I don't think PvP is going to work at all. The reason why they want PvP is because it's infinite replayable content that they can make gameplay on. And because it would be fighting other players' teams, it would be hard, but it would also be different. So therefore, you could not only do all of the stuff that you'd usually do, but at the exact same time, you could have a guild content where you can put your guild or your own points against other people's points. This would satisfy the competitive nature of players and basically be a stand-in for PvP. And I think that they could achieve this about 8 times better than if they were to add in PvP. So first of all, I want to look at basically the setup. So the setup for guild content is obviously have a guild area. So I think a guild area should either be a small planet that you can chart to, or it could just be a place in the Astral Express. Now, in the Astral Express, or on a planet, there should be essentially just an area, probably circular in shape, and has a few things to interact with. First of all, when you create a guild, I think that this room should be completely blank. And it's your job to renovate the room. And this could be a very easy quest, where you talk to Pom Pom, and he says, hey, there's this room, blah blah blah, it's empty, can you help me renovate it? So you go in, you renovate the room, and then you unlock all of the sort of guild room renovation content. From then on, you can choose to create a guild. When you create a guild, it will create a guild hideout type thing, or a guild room. And from there, you, the leader, as well as maybe 3 elected officials, which will literally just be, I guess, click on their name and make them an official. You could then, all 4 of you, could customize the hideout, or you could make it so they can't customize the hideout. You should be able to give permissions to officials, dependent on what you want your officials to do. Quite simply, it could be as simple as make it so your officials can start a guild war, and nothing else. Because maybe you're away, and maybe you need to say, hey guys, start a guild war. That is just one example if you really don't want your officials having much power. This is an issue in quite a lot of games that have guild content, where people don't want to elect an official because, quite simply, it's scary. Having someone else have permissions other than you, and you don't know this person, can be a big leap. And so I think having ways to lower the amount of essential, access that the officials have is also important. Then from there, you could customize your own guild hideout, and eventually you could put in guild trophies. These could be for doing various guild content, but I think that we should probably have 3 kinds of guild content. First of all, I think that we should have a just guild boss. Guild bosses in most games go as follows. There is an enemy with a very large or infinite amount of health. Everyone gets a certain amount of attacks per week, and depending on the amount of damage they do, or the amount of alternate point gathering ways, you basically would get rewards each week. Now, once again, I don't think these rewards should be gated to primo gems, but I think that it should be something either related to customization or guild coins, and then we have a guild store where we can buy primo gems, alongside a few other guild things. Now, I think the best way of doing this is quite simply have a weekly rotating boss in the guild. This weekly rotating boss should have a few different forms. So whether it is as an example, one of the soldiers that Japard has, you know, the ones with the shield and the spear, or whether it could just be the swarm bug. And then it would have different weaknesses, and then you could say, oh, the swarm bug, if you hit it with a follow-up attack, you just get some free points. Or if you're, you know, maybe you're fighting one of the Sanctus Medicus officer things, and they'll summon a goldfish, and then for every goldfish you kill, it will give you more points. So that could be like a destruction boss, because you're hitting the main one, and then hitting the two side ones. You know, there could be like slight little mechanics behind each boss that you could get more points from. And I think this would be basically ways of making other people build other characters instead of everyone just using the same old Jingliu or Danheng team. I think this is probably how it should work in Honkai as well. I don't really see guild bosses being done many other ways, but I think the first big piece of content that we should add to a guild is a weekly resetting guild boss that gives you points based on the damage you deal. And that would pretty much be it. The points would correlate to a certain reward. So let's say you're above a certain amount of points, you should get a certain amount of reward from doing the boss. Now, there are two ways to do this. Either we say we base it off of the people in the guild's points. So you could essentially say, oh well, the top person in your guild did the most damage, so they get this reward. Or you could put the boss into point brackets for everyone. So let's say the 20 people out of 30 in your guild are really good at the game. They've got really good teams and beat the boss as much as they can. They would be, let's say, 10,000 points and above. So this would mean that more than one person gets the best reward. I think that this is probably the best way to do it, but at the same time, I think competitiveness within the guild is a good thing, and so making it so if you are the number one in your guild, you get some good rewards is also important, because this is going to spread out whales. If we are going to do something that is essentially guild war, where we put guild against guild, obviously the ones with the people who spend the most money are going to win. The big issue with this is the whales aren't being spread out. The best way to spread out whales is make it so that the whales are fighting for rewards to the point where if they just played in a guild that doesn't have a whale, they would have a infinitely higher chance at getting the tier 1 reward from the weekly guild boss. So this would make it so essentially whales would join lower tier guilds to get the most points in the guild boss so that they could get the best rewards. But at the same time, it would mean that because you have a whale who's going to be gathering so many points, if we had a guild war type content, which I will talk about shortly, that whale would be able to carry everyone else into getting a bit higher points, and make the people who are new to the game or new to guilds or just don't have good teams. It would make them happy because they would get better rewards because their guild placed better. Now, moving on from guild bosses, I think that we need another form of passive content. Something that would literally just be equivalent to the expeditions you send your characters on every day when you log in. I think that literally just sending your characters away to go gather materials is a really good way of just promoting someone to check out the guild. So first of all, every day you should have a little menu, and in that menu you can put, I don't know, let's say 3 characters in. And when you send them off in the guild, let's say it's a longer expedition, maybe it's a once a week expedition, or maybe once every 2 days as an example. What you do is you'd put them in the guild terminal, they would go away, and they would, I don't know, bring back some guild coins. But alongside this, I think you should just get a few of the corresponding materials to the characters. So for ratio, you would get hunt, like the things you get from calyxes. You'd get the hunt ones for obviously ratio, and then let's say you send ratio, Jingliu, and blade. You'd get hunt and then 2 destruction. This would just make it so it's a bit easier to build characters, and it would incentivize people who don't want to buy stuff from the guild shop to actually do it. As well as, if we are going to have a guild shop that you can buy customizations for your own room in, I also think that we should be able to buy a certain amount of Primogems each week from the guild shop. But at the same time, this is how we would balance it out. If you are doing both guild boss and you are doing the little guild quest expedition things, you should get enough to pretty much buy whatever you want each week. So you could maybe buy crafting materials, and then with those crafting materials you can craft like a certain amount of picture frames, or you know, you could craft like a little aquarium as an example, or you could craft one of the guild bosses as a little trophy. But then you could also buy the weekly Primogems. However, I think that we should make it so if you can't do the guild boss because your team sucks, you should still be able to join a guild and get the free Primogems by just sending some characters away, claiming the rewards, and then using those guild tokens you get from the expedition to buy the Primogems. This would mean that, once again, we're not leaving out the people who can't compete at a higher level. Now finally, I'm sure the part that everyone's been waiting for is Guild War. The way I would probably do Guild War is have a world boss. Now, this would essentially work the exact same as a guild boss, but instead of it being based off of the points of the people in your guild, it would be based off of the total points of your guild versus another guild. So for example, the world boss would appear, and this world boss is going to have a certain mechanic, and it's going to have a few other things, right? So it's going to be a bit more different to your normal, average, everyday boss. So for this specific example, just to help you guys envision it, I'm going to say that it is a swarm bug. And these swarm bugs are obviously going to spawn more little swarm bugs. And then, let's say you get the most points from how many little bugs that you kill. So in this case, you would want an erudition character. Argenti would work phenomenally, because you'd attack the swarm bug until it spawned in the max amount of little bugs, and then you would just ult with Argenti. You would do a good portion of damage with the after effect to the main boss, and you'd probably kill all the swarm bugs. But at the same time, if you're a bad player and you can't damage the boss enough to get a good amount of points, you could literally just run a hunt character and focus on specifically killing the little bugs and just forget the big ones even there. This would mean that not only like players at the bottom could get points, but also players at the top could get a lot more points by having, as example, destruction characters or massive AoE characters that deal a lot of damage. And then finally, your guild would be placed on a ladder. This ladder would have obviously various point thresholds, and the number 1 guild would probably get a trophy that, I don't know, has something on it. It would say either like where it was acquired from, or, you know, number 1 guild for this week's specific boss. And I don't know whether we should have the trophies expire. Obviously, you can't just be keeping adding infinite amounts of bosses. This would be bad for gameplay loop, because realistically it'd be taking up too much for a mechanic that doesn't come around a lot. So I think it should probably rotate between maybe 10 bosses, and we'll just call it there. And after it rotates 10 times, the trophies will either expire and you'd have to get them again. This would mean that people are actively motivated to keep their trophy. This would be sort of like WWE belts, right? You know, you win it, and then I'm pretty sure this is how it works. I'm not quite sure, but you know, and then you'd win it, and then you'd have to defend your title against someone else. That would essentially probably be how it would work. So having a world boss through the guild is probably the best way to put big guilds against other big guilds. As well as giving you that, you know, essentially PvP type style content by comparing your points to someone else's points. This could be either through the entire guild, but the best way to satisfy a PvP player's sort of want is literally put them directly against other players. So probably guild boss would be the best way. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that we could be getting our own room, or we could eventually get guilds? I'm personally really hopeful for guilds, and I can see us getting our own room in the near future. So, I hope you guys all have a great day. If you liked the video, please drop a like. If you disliked the video, give it a dislike. If you have anything to say in the comments, please say it, and I will try to respond to as many as I can. Once again, have a great day, and see you in the next one. Peace.